Gaslighting in American media. Today on the second segment, we're going to discuss gaslighting and what it means. So, Jeff, what exactly is gaslighting?
So gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation. It's when a person or a group, they sow seeds of doubt. So like if you publicly see Donald Trump, you know, disowning the violence that's happening in America, and then you see a New York Times article that says Biden has disowned the violence, why won't Trump? That is gaslighting. You're seeing Donald Trump disown the violence, but the media, they post headlines like that, and you're like, it makes you question what you're seeing. They're using it's a denial or a misdirection, a contradiction of some form to try to get you to think what you're seeing in reality isn't actually real.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. And they've been doing that for a while now.
A long
Have
time.
they not? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into this article here. So this is about the Charlottesville riots here. Now, we're all familiar with what happened. The media said many, many times that Trump did not disavow them. And so there's truth and there's fiction to that. In the beginning, Trump did fail to condemn specifically the white nationalists, which he got heat for.
Right.
Correctly, he got heat for.
Rightfully so.
Exactly. But he did come back. As the article rightfully points out, Donald Trump officially said 3 times that white supremacist hate groups should be totally condemned. And the mainstream media reported it as if he showed up to the press conference in a white robe and hood. Trump gives white supremacists an unequivocal boost, hyperventilated the New York Times in their article, equating activists protesting racism with the neo-Nazis and white supremacists who rampaged in Charlottesville over the weekend. Of course, Trump said verbatim he was not comparing anybody on a moral plane. So presumably, that's another red herring lie to distract from the collapse of the last narrative they concocted against the commander-in-chief. Alleging Trump defended white supremacy is a threat to the peace of the nation, and the media's deliberate misquoting of the president undermines the very foundation upon which press freedoms are built. It's nothing new. The mainstream media gives light to gaslight. Their position of power has for years irresponsibly elevated fringe forces of bigotry, promoting hatred and also normalizing deception. Freedom of speech is now on trial, though before we can fight to reassert the essential values of democracy, we must regain control of the truth. If that seems hyperbolic, I would encourage you to slam a Red Bull while listening to the second verse of New Slaves. The press is not on your side. It's time to wake up.
I agree.
So the gaslighting just seems like a way to, I guess, in the sense of Donald Trump, to put Donald Trump in a position where he has to specifically disavow certain groups.
Yeah. And if you've been on Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, doesn't matter. You're going to see people say, well, Donald Trump didn't condemn them white supremacists, but he did. And they like, so like it, not only is gaslighting when they're trying to purposely manipulate the words, but it's also them failing to cover that. So if you run a story that says Donald Trump does not disown the white supremacist groups of Charlottesville, and then you don't write another story when he does, you're purposely manipulating at that point in time.
Yeah. And, bias in the media, we've seen it time and time again. But I also have to ask, so Trump, generally I disapprove of white supremacists, he would say. But would it have been better if he said, I disapprove of the specific groups?
Well, just imagine for a moment if he said, I disapprove of all ethnic nationalism. They would have went and ran with that too, because it's not specific enough,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So I think an argument I've seen, maybe not this specific one, but an argument I've seen is Trump didn't disavow the groups at Unite the Right. He just, in a broad term, said, I disavow white supremacists. Should he have said, I disavow Proud Boys, the Patriot Prayer, whoever else?
And no, okay. I say no, and this is why. When you bring their names up, you're giving them credibility. So if we're attacked by a terrorist organization and you bring their name up, you're now admitting that they're a valid organization. And the best way to minimize that is to pretend like they don't exist. Okay. Don't bring them any credit. Like when a mass shooting happens and it's just that person's just plastered all over the news. The better option would be to pretend like that person never existed, so that people wouldn't do this for the clout or for the attention.
Okay, so then I would like to talk about why the right wants the left to disavow Antifa. Isn't that going exactly against speaking the name of the terrorist organizations? I mean, look at how long did it take Obama to say ISIS? Took what, years? Maybe a
Yeah.
year, 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, but Antifa's well known, and I still get people from the left hand side that's telling me, they're not real. It's an ideology. It's an ideology, and that's not true. You can trace back to where they were founded. You can trace back to their chapter in Oregon. They are a real entity. They are not just an ideology. And I promise you, 99% of all Americans are anti-fascist based off ideology. But
Yeah.
99% of Americans are not in that communist organization. And I will argue all day long and tell you that you're silly and dishonest if you tell me it's not a real organization.
No, it is definitely a real organization. But you have to remember that the left itself almost seems to be allies with Antifa and
Yeah, some of them.
this Black Lives Matter movement. Now, when I say movement, I want to reiterate that the message itself, I think, it has devolved and separated from the movement.
Well, I'd also,
You can agree with the message, right? But the
yeah.
group is actively, with Antifa, actively burning down cities.
But it's also important to notice, like, I support Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
The statement that Black Lives Matter. The statement and the organization are completely different, and that needs a clear defining line in between it if it wants to be taken seriously, because the organization is a joke.
It is, and I think that a lot of people are coming to that conclusion as well, that the organization does not really represent the actual saying. And so it's a real issue because the Black Lives Matter movement in itself was gaining a lot of ground until it got hijacked almost by these rioters that are now literally burning down businesses and killing people in the name of
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and that's a shame because that completely tarnishes all of the movement of the saying. I mean, they've begun to make progress, but by this hijacking, they're going in the opposite direction.
Well, take a seat back real quick and remember the housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a movement called Occupy Wall Street?
Yes.
That was a great movement until it was hijacked. Who hijacked that? The anarchists. They did.
Yes.
The communists. This is the same exact thing happening again. They take a great movement, they steal it, and then they turn it into crap.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, and like you said, I mean, as we've seen in the recent days, black men are still being shot by police, and the Black Lives Matter movement is taking notice and starting to protest. The issue is it's going to be co-opted by the anarchists, and they're going to start burning shit down, and it's going to completely take away from the fact that there are racial injustices.
And you hear sayings like you can kill more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. I understand the outrage, but when you let these anarchists, communists, they come and they hijack the movement and they start the violence, like you said, in the burning down, people stop caring.
Exactly. And that is the issue that I have with it.
But
also, as you pointed out, with immediate gaslighting, Joe Biden refuses to condemn the left-wing violence, as this article points out here. So as it starts, when Elizabeth Newman went to work in counterterrorism in Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security, she thought she'd be focused on his Islamic extremism, as she was in George W. Bush's administration. But as the Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism and Threat Prevention at DHS, she soon realized that she had to take the threat of white supremacist terrorism seriously. It was probably 2018 when we started to realize that this was not just a blip. The Charlottesville wasn't just a blip. Combating white nationalism isn't easy when you work for an administration that incites it, as she said in a recent Republican Voters Against Trump ad. The president's language gave permission to white supremacists to think that what they were doing was permissible. You've probably heard analysis like this from the left-leaning Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, which is coming from someone who voted for the president and worked for him until April. Such violence is the main terrorist threat facing America, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Right-wing extremists were behind two-thirds of terrorist attacks and plots in the United States last year, and over 90% of such attacks between January 1st and May 8th this year, Trump has inspired and encouraged them. Now, I don't see, she doesn't include any evidence
None.
that Trump inspired them, but like we said before, should Trump actually condemn these white nationalists? Because she goes on correctly to point out that last year and some of this year, all of the mass shootings were done by white people who they are calling white nationalists.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's more. I think it's more or less like a full circle too, because Donald Trump did condemn white nationalism. Like he said, they should be condemned. But she might not know that at the same time because it's not really reported on. So like, if anything, that could almost be used as evidence to just prove that gaslighting is a problem. Because I mean, as it is. I mean, gaslighting is a problem. I mean, white nationalism is a problem, as we know. We know these mass shootings that happen. They're a problem. But I mean, I feel like she should do better. But by making such a claim that he gives white nationalists a platform and not providing any type of evidence, that's a bold claim.
It is disingenuous.
It's bold.
Yeah,
I don't like it. But
I know I think that is herself gaslighting, and it's a shame because there may be some evidence that as she said, the right wing party, the Republicans, incite the violence, and vaguely there may be some Republicans who may not speak out the way that they should. But that being said, you can't conflate all white nationalism with Republicans.
No, but that's like Richard Spencer, who organized the alt-right rally. He endorses Joe Biden. I get it. You can't help who endorses you, but like that would be just like the Republicans saying, if that's like the Republicans blaming the alt-right on the Democratic Party because he endorses Biden. That's kind of like what they do. And it's a little it's dishonest, and it's bickering back and forth between the two powers, and you should just take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and also I'd like to point out that Joe Biden didn't condemn anything, nothing.
No.
So 97 days of rioting, no one condemned anything until the Patriot Prayer showed up and someone got shot.
Until Don Lemon said it's hurting their polling numbers. They
Correct.
Don't care. It's hurting their polling numbers. Now they care.
No, they don't care. They don't care. Yeah. But also, we need to point out that, to a degree, the riots are helping Trump, and I think it would be in Trump's best interest to not do anything about them. So both sides are playing the political game, and it is at the expense of these cities where the riots are happening.
It's at the expense of the people. It always has been. Always will be.
And I'd also like to point out, as I said earlier, that with the Proud Boys going into Portland, there will be violence. There will probably be multiple shootings. And again, it's just going to be a way for the left to say, well, look, guys, this is all done by white nationalists. They're bad. Don't worry about what Antifa is doing. Ignore them. This is all the doing of the white nationalists.
Another good example is, too, what I want to point out to you, that the prayer, the guy that was shot just recently, what organization was he from?
The Patriot Prayer.
Yeah, the guy that was shot. I've seen a lot of news articles saying, well, the Trump convoy was pepper spraying them, and it was almost like a way for them to justify it. But you would never see that about the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
What do you mean?
So what I'm saying is I've seen a lot of articles talking about how when they had the Trump convoy going through, that they were, pepper spraying,
shooting paintballs.
Shooting paintball. You've seen it, right? So you've seen it. So like it was almost like a way, like I'm thinking of for them to justify the shooting, like they weren't the instigators, right?
Oh no, that's exactly what they're doing.
But like with the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, you don't see very many major news outlets saying, you know, well, he was attacked first, because, you know, and that's gaslighting. That's disingenuous.
Oh, yes. It doesn't fit the narrative that he was attacked, because then they can't say that the protests are peaceful.
Right.
He was a militiaman, a white nationalist,
Yeah.
a white supremacist, even though he killed 2 white people and shot
Right.
another one. Again, you know, it's none of them are genuine, and
None.
it's a shame, because people are consuming this media, and
Yeah.
they're forming their opinions based around lies.
Yeah. Around people who have no integrity.
Exactly.
Right. Well, that was our that's gaslighting segment. You need to be on the lookout for this. You need to sit down, you need to analyze what you're reading, and you need to use a skill that has seemed to be forgotten in American culture, and that is critical thinking. It's your
Agreed.
best friend. You need to use it, because if not, you're going to be manipulated.
Agreed. So that's our segment. Tune in for more. Like, comment, subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. And we'll see you in the next one.
Subscribe.